We are.
Very cool. First ever one of these, but well, I guess we should start this off like normal. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Breakfast with Buzz. Usually I'm not on a camera, but here we are. We're in Miami. We're actually at Max Cycles. Actually, we had breakfast together. I always start off with breakfast with Buzz. With breakfast, we actually had the same thing, so I can explain what we had. Actually, why don't you explain what we had? I ordered and then you countered my order. So you,
It's your world. I just want to eat in it. So I went right with what you had. It was a croissant sandwich at the W Hotel. Pretty highbrow. They had like cloth napkins. It was nice. And the potatoes were good. And I got to tell you, if you still eat as fast as like a pro cyclist.
Well, I was rushed to get here. You should introduce yourself. You
Yeah.
are Richard Fries, and you are here coordinating the cycling side of Best Buddies Challenge. How long have you been doing this? And actually, maybe let's go back even further. Best Buddies, what is it?
Best Buddies is an amazing charity founded by Anthony Kennedy Shriver in 1989. Started it out of his dorm room at Georgetown. He grew up really sensitized to the needs to include people with intellectual and developmental disabilities into all facets of our life. Really long history with the family, worth checking out. The same family that started Special Olympics. They started that in his backyard, and he said, "Hey, Mom, what happens the rest of the year?" And so he went out and started this amazing program. And to fund it,
Ricardo, call B201, please, Ricardo.
and fund it, we are in a bike shop. To fund it, he started a bike ride, didn't know a thing about bikes, and he just got better and better, and now he is completely nuts about bikes. We do 3 challenge rides, and we do some camps out of Malibu that are amazing. You can check them out on bestbuddieschallenge.org, but our Miami ride, you got to witness it for the first time, is off the chain, maybe the most exhilarating and unique training ride or challenge charity ride on the planet. But I would like you're a pro, you've done dozens and dozens and dozens of charity rides, but that one was something, huh?
It was, yeah. So this is actually my first time ever to the state of Florida.
No way.
Yeah, it's surprising. I've traveled the world, but first time I've been to Florida, and I guess to come to Miami and to see that ride and last night at the gala was like really a good synopsis of kind of the scene in Miami. Yeah, we did an awesome, wound up being 75-mile ride yesterday. We were joined by, I think there's like, 50 some odd 50, 60 participants plus a number of pro riders. We'll be hearing from some of them today. We've got Tim Johnson here, we've got Allison Tetrick, we've got Mary Holden. But on the ride yesterday, Cam Worth was there, Chloe Dygert, Axel Merckx, Alexander Vinokourov made a pop-up
out of
appearance.
nowhere.
Yeah. Who else was on? I know I'm missing someone. Well, Chris Froome was there.
Yeah, that guy.
So yeah, it was really cool to see. I guess for me, a lot of friends from the past.
Yeah.
Who I haven't seen a lot. I know some of them have been to multiple of these events. I know Chris Froome's been here 4 or 5 times. Rigo Berto was there. But yeah, I mean, I guess for people who are interested in Best Buddies, I know we went to a gala dinner last night. Tom Brady was there. I'd say most of my following, tend to follow cycling probably more than the NFL. But you said, there's the Best Buddies Challenge here in Miami coming up very shortly. You have an event out in Malibu, which is not just a
2
single
weeks.
day event. It's a 4 or 5 day.
5-day camp in
Yeah.
the Santa Monica Mountains.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
also an event up on Cape Cod as well.
Boston is June 1, and then next October we'd go back to California again. We're doing an amazing thing out of the Skywalker Ranch. The celebrity stuff, the art stuff. We had I'm like getting ready to introduce the pros at Skywalker Ranch, and I go in the back room to get ready, and I look, and there's Lisa Loeb tuning up her guitar. And
Yeah.
it's like everywhere you turn around here, they're just dropping celebrities. So
Yeah.
it's really cool in that sense, and can't say enough about that experience. But also, what I think makes us proudest, and you're going to talk to Tim Johnson later, is that I learned a lot from his ride on Washington, how to really run a group ride like no other group ride. And you were in the back yesterday, and we take care of everybody on the ride. It's sort of the ethos of Best Buddies. We're not always about the first, the fast, and the famous. We got to worry about the last, the lost, and the lonely. And I got to say, I've never seen a pro ride like you did. And I know you've been doing it at some gravel events, but really taking care of beginners that are in there. They can't believe they're going as fast and as safely as they're going. I just get really proud of it. We have a police enclosure yesterday, and that's
full rolling enclosure
Yeah.
through Miami, 75 miles of no stopping. Running red lights, police, zoom. It's kind of like being back in the Peloton.
Right.
The police will stop the traffic, then they'll come up the side, stop the next, next intersection. Is really, really something special. It's something that a lot of people don't get a experience outside.
Yeah.
If you've never done a pro race, you don't know what it feels like to just continually pedal without
Right.
any interruptions.
What made me happiest was how good the pros were when very often you get to a chaotic challenge charity ride of some type and the pros are like, get me out of here, this thing's dangerous. But I think we do a pretty good job of keeping it super safe where we make sure those people that raise the funds to come here are right next to a pro, and all of the riders were just over the top about just what it was so nice to get right next to Chris Froome, and Froome was great, came all the way to the back. Magnus Sheffield is such a great
Yeah.
young kid. So many good riders, and but the way they rode and behaved, and everybody gets a picture riding with them, it's just good.
Yeah, well, and we should also mention that we're talking a lot about bikes, but we are here for fundraising for Best Buddies.
Yeah.
And I think Anthony said last night that this ride yesterday was the highest fundraising ride that they've ever put together. I think it was $1.something million we raised.
Yeah, it was the
Just
highest
on
one
the ride.
of that edition. Our Boston ride has gotten up to where it's done 4 or 5 million. It's on pace to do 6 million this year. That's one more of an open, more of a traditional ride that'll probably get 1,500 riders. But these challenge rides are what they do is they provide really important funds for these program workers that work in all 50 states, about 46 countries. Let's just say you have a member of your family with Down syndrome. Yep, we're going to make sure that they're in that school. We're going to help them with job placement. We're going to help them even with living arrangements that we're trying to do. And it's not just the impact on our friends that might be living with Down syndrome. Their entire family unit is impacted. We both know Robbie Ketchel and the Ketchel family. They have a child with Down syndrome, and just the stress that those families are under financially, time-wise, how many surgeries some of the
Yeah.
people with IDD have to have. You met Katie Mead in her speech,
Yeah.
talked about she had 3 open heart surgeries, but there she is, just as lovely as ever. And
Yeah.
it's been a long, long journey to go from where things were for people with intellectual disabilities in as late as the 1950s and to where we are now. Where
Yeah.
they're in Max Cycle, you'll walk around and you'll see employees here that are
Yeah.
part of Best Buddies.
Exactly. Well, Richard, I appreciate you kind of giving us an intro to Best Buddies, the ride side of it. Now we're going to bring in a few riders and talk to them about kind of their experience and what's brought them here to Miami. So, Richard,
Fantastic.
thank you so much. And
Bravo.
I guess for anyone who's looking to get involved, to maybe join one of the rides, where's the best way to go?
BestBuddiesChallenge.org. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're all over. And if you want to find out about the charity, it's just bestbuddies.org, and you can look around and see what we do. We're impacting people all over the world.
Awesome. Well,
Great.
thank you, Richard.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, switch out. This is hard to get out of.
Yeah, come on, Allison, you're fine. Got you up here. We've got Tim Johnson doing being Mike Guy, who's the Mike Guy. Allison Tetrick, all the way from Petaluma, here at Max Cycle in Florida. Have you ever been to Florida before?
I have been to Florida. I heard this is your first time.
It is my first time. Second time at this bike shop.
And that's awesome. Yeah, so I've been here before, but I love it. So,
And is this your first ever Best Buddies Challenge ride?
no, my first Best Buddies Challenge ride was in 2008 in
Wow.
California, and we went from Carmel Valley down to Big Sur, and all the way to Hertz Castle.
And I think there's an annual event up at Hertz Castle, a little hillier than here in Miami.
Yes, a few more hills, but
Yeah.
it's a gorgeous ride. So.
And how did you get involved in this year's event?
I actually came here through my connections at Mac Cycle and Fitness, as well as Wahoo and Specialized.
Awesome. Have you ever been? This is the first time at this bike shop.
This is my first time here, except yesterday for the rest stop.
I'm gonna ask you a question, and there is a
Yeah.
hint in this room. When was Mac Cycles founded?
60 years ago.
1957. So close. I'm not the best at math, but you're not too far off. I mean, it is a really impressive bike shop. Like, I was here the other night for a walk, kicker night, and I was like walking around in this, and just like it's almost like a museum. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to like walk inside and just see like some of the old bikes hanging up in the jersey. I mean, here we have jerseys from Jan Ulrich, Froome, Iran, Julian Absalon. I mean, we have some NFL. I'm not as familiar with the NFL, but maybe you know who some of these jerseys are. But yeah.
I'm
Ray
thinking like
Allen.
they're missing our jerseys.
Well, there's a spot up high up behind you. You can maybe get
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to send a jersey in
Yeah.
here for sure. But I met Mary Jane and her family at a retail event that you and I attended at Specialized. We were launching our new bikes this year,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
they said you should come to Miami for Best Buddies.
Yeah. And I mean, having done this event in 2008 out in California and now coming here, what differences have you seen, and like what sort of impact does coming to an event like this have for you? Because yet, I mean, I guess starting on Thursday night, you know, we had like a little welcome dinner. We got to meet some of the buddies. You know, last night we saw, you know, one of the buddies was up there doing a rack last night. I was like, oh wow, this is actually like insane, and like, you know, to see the opportunities that these, you know, I don't want to say kids, but individuals are getting through this organization. I mean, oftentimes you and I are riding bikes, and yeah, sometimes we're involved in, you know, raising awareness, different causes, but like this is like on another level.
Yeah, the way these events are organized and the impact they make are astronomical. So like so much money is being raised for an incredible cause, and that's something that we all can be connected to. And offering our mentorship, donations, time to ride. I also attended the Best Buddies California Challenge earlier this year, which was super cool. It's right in my backyard.
Yeah.
But I've seen this just keep growing, and this critical movement of providing this inclusivity and opportunity for so many people, and some real money being raised for a great cause. So it's been a tremendous to be a part of.
I mean, and you're at a point in your career now where you're still going to a lot of these gravel events and events like this. You're still doing some racing, but you're kind of mixing it up. Did you ever anticipate that this would be something that would be, you know, after your racing career? I mean, because oftentimes when both of us were coming up through racing, like you retire, then, you know, the reality is most of us, you have to go get a normal job. And you did have a normal job for a while. But did you ever anticipate that you would still be involved in the world of cycling while making such a big impact?
I did. I think I hit a point in my career where I'm like, the bike gave me so much. Like, I've been through really bad crashes, really bad injuries, coming back. But what kept me coming back was the community and the causes and the power of the bike. And so it felt more selfish for me to leave the sport and not give back through it than to stay here and keep making a difference. And I think everybody that resonates with you though is like that it's more than just riding bikes
Yeah.
in Miami, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's about the impact and the power the bicycle can provide to so many people in different ways. So I just felt that I owed it to the people that kept bringing me back and giving me this opportunity to travel around the world, to race, challenge myself. All of that felt very selfish if I just left the sport and didn't stay here and try to make a difference.
And fortunately, cycling is a sport that you can do for the majority of your life. You know, you can. I was just down in Mexico, and one of the gentlemen who was riding with us was 85 years old. He was on a Creo, so he was on an e-bike. But I was like, that's insane. You know, that you can be 85 and doing 60, 70 mile rides. Like that's really cool. I mean, do you see the bike being part of your life forever?
I do, and that's how I got into the sport, was actually through my grandfather, who raced into his 80s. So I played tennis in college, moved to Boston, was working in biotechnology, and still had this competitive drive, so did some like triathlon, and my grandfather was like, call him Grampy, but he was like, Al, you should try racing bikes. And I'm like, that's the dorkiest thing I've ever heard of. Like, you wear that tight clothing, and sure enough, I got the bug, borrowed his jersey, signed up for my first race. I was able to attend a USA Cycling Talent Identification Camp at the Olympic Training Center. And my grandpa got to drive in and see me training to be on the national team. And he had over 17 like Masters national titles.
Wow.
And he raced until he was 80s. And
Wow.
and I think that was just such a good example for me that sports are timeless and ageless. You don't always have to be professional. You don't have to take risk or anything like that. But just sports can bring out your youth and the opportunity to challenge yourself to be your best version, and then to also give that back to others.
Yeah. And your boyfriend, sorry, not boyfriend, you're married.
Oh, I'm
now.
married.
Husband,
I am a
husband.
married woman.
Husband, Blaze is also, he works in the cycling industry. He
Mhm.
oftentimes is with you, whether he's riding or I know you're not the best bike mechanic, so you married someone who is a professional mechanic. Being in a relationship that is so ingrained in cycling, where Blaze said you guys are headed off to a little vacation after this. First time you've ever gone on a trip together without bikes. What is that going to be like?
We brought our running shoes because I have a lot of energy and I don't sit still well. Vacation is a very foreign word to me, but having a relationship built around bikes it's awesome. And having the opportunity for him to attend events like the Best Buddies Challenge with me, and what he can give back through the community. And it's something that we did meet through the sport, and we share the same love of bikes. And it's kind of cool. I mean, it rocks people's world a little bit, because he'll travel with me and do my support. And then when he can compete, he'll compete as well. But like, it's kind of fun to see him out there, and I'm so much better with him around. So I show up on time. Usually my bike will work, especially if he's there. So
He's worked on my bike as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in 2021, before I went Unbound, I came over to your little house in Florida, and I was like, Blaze, I just need like a couple little, like, I know most of my bike, but there's like a couple little things I just want you to look it over, and like, sure enough, flawless.
I call it the blessing of Blaze.
Yes,
He
yes.
touches a bike and it works perfect, and you win Unbound. Both of us have won.
There we go. Maybe next year I gotta get Blaze back on my team before the race. We are sitting here in, look at this, Thanksgiving's next week. It's November. Next year's kind of just around the corner. What do you have planned?
I think you and I will probably have a similar schedule, so we'll be seeing each other a lot on the road, with Specialized in Wahoo, and trying to figure out a way to come back here to Max Cycle and Fitness, because Miami,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool here. We'll be at SBT, Unbound, all sorts of just
Sea Otter.
Sea
I
Otter.
guess you're close. It's a local event for you.
I love Sea Otter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be all around leading rides, and you and I have done mutual support together. We can race together. We can, so I think our schedules look very similar, but.
So TBD on the specifics, but yeah, the big ones will be at. You have raced around the world now. Like, you've done as far as in the gravel space, you've either participated or been at pretty much every big event. Is there any cycling event that you still see as like, okay, I want to do this at some point before, you don't want to travel as much, or before you just, naturally you slow down? No, that's actually too big of a challenge for me. You actually mentioned to me, you asked me about Cape Epic, maybe this summer, like, hey, do you think I should do Cape Epic? Is that like an event that you're still like considering, to thinking of like, hey, I could actually go and do this, or I want to do this? Or are there other events, just around the world that you've seen that you're like, hey, actually I want to do this before I, decide to slow things down a bit?
I think Cape Epic's hilarious, because I got a phone call the other day, and I texted you, and I got pitched if I wanted to do Cape Epic with Blaze. Basically it's comic relief, because are we going to stay married after mountain biking as partners? And I am not notoriously well on a mountain bike, so we might be doing Cape Epic this year.
Coming year.
Yeah,
Oh,
you texted me and said, it's not so bad.
Yeah, you'd be fine. I mean, and they're long days. There is some technical bits, but nothing that's like too ridiculous. If it's crazy technical, you can get off and walk. And having Blaze, it would be like, I would recommend doing it with someone you really want to have a good time with, and someone you also get along with. Because not only are you spending 4 to 7 hours a day on the bike, you're also either staying in a tent or an RV with someone, so you're like constantly, constantly surrounded by this individual. So you and Blaze already spend so much time together. Maybe not the worst guest to bring along with you.
Oh, I will be so happy. It's up to
Yeah. And I did learn yesterday. I was out pushing it. Randy, who's involved here at Max Cycle, he's done it a couple times, and he's doing it this year as a co-ed pair. And in co-ed pairs, pushing is also allowed.
Oh.
So you remember.
So I'll have to push
Blaze.
I'll have to push
hills.
Blaze up those hills.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's just speaking about events and bucket lists, like gravel's like offered me a lot of places to go, and I raced World Tour for a long time, so traveled and lived in Europe a lot. But I love these new events that are popping up. Like, we had the opportunity to go to Finland last year, and just to keep going to we've raced in Iceland, and it's kind of fun, but like, I try not to stay just doing the same events over and over again, because it's the bicycles, the freedom of trying new things, and then of course we have our icons that we keep returning to.
Yeah. There's the big ones you're going to be at. Well, Allison, I appreciate it. We're going to go on a yacht later today. How do you do on a boat? I know you used to ride horses, which is, I guess, similar movement. Like motion sickness.
I'm on a boat. I don't think so, but now you brought that up, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, well, it's not it's slightly windy out there. It might be a little choppy. But
Yep.
Who knows? Blaze and I may bail and go for a run.
Yeah, you guys should go for a run.
Mexico.
Yeah, all right.
Allison, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we're going to bring in our next guest, Tammy Boy, who's so graciously been on Night Fuel this morning.
Now I get to come out of the shadows into the spotlight. Excited to be here.
Tell you what, I should start doing more podcasts like this. Is great. You can just
Yeah.
crank through people.
Quick and easy.
Tim Johnson,
How's it going? Good morning.
fellow New Englander.
Yeah.
How's the heat been in
Are you
Florida?
really a New Englander?
No, not
I
at
mean,
all. I'll forever be a Flatlander, especially in Vermont.
Yeah.
But maybe my daughter's daughter.
She's born into it. Yeah.
her
All good.
daughter's child.
All good.
Yeah, my wife is. How's it going?
Good. Good. Yeah.
Enjoying it down here?
Yeah. Recovering from a good ride yesterday.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild. As Richard kind of was trying to intimate, like, it is truly a very unique way to raise money through bikes, because having closed roads through downtown Miami on a Friday morning is like, it was like racing. You
Yeah.
know, like, that's one of the things that I miss most about racing is like being able to just follow the group and never stop.
Mm-hmm.
You always know where you're going, and
Yeah.
like the sound of the motorcycles brought back all those memories of like
PTSD.
helicopters and motorcycles, and like, you know, the yell in the group, like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good experience.
Yeah. Yeah, there was at one point we actually rode on I-95 yesterday. We did like an out and back. I'm not sure if you were in the peloton, but there was a gentleman who his rotor was bent, so he was like, you know, he was just going slower because his brakes were rubbing.
Oh yeah.
And I was with Randy off the back pushing him, and I was kind of like starting to stress out a bit. I'm like, oh, like, you know, the cops were like, you know, trying to like push us along so we can, you know, get to the rest stop.
Like you'll
And-
fall out of the envelope.
Yeah, so we could like we're on
Yeah.
a huge, like one of the biggest interstates in the U.S. And I was like panicking, and then I was like, this is actually pretty cool. Like, we're going over this bridge on I-95, and we're just like no cars,
Just the three of you
three of
guys.
us, like
Yeah.
with an ambulance, police car, you know, a support vehicle from Max Cycle behind us. I was like, this is like, I'm just gonna actually I'm not gonna rush this. Let's just like
And there's
enjoy
no
this
rush,
moment.
because the next time you stop is going to be the feed zone with like the best feed zone you've ever had.
Yeah, it was like the chocolate chip cookies. I was just with Phil Diamond down in Mexico, and
Yeah.
we had a chocolate chip cookie down there because I know that's like his thing. The
Yeah,
cookies.
right.
Um,
Just feed zone or something.
these were top notch.
I think it's probably the wet towel with the eucalyptus.
I didn't have one of those.
Essence of eucalyptus in it.
Yeah.
And you're just like wiping your face in the middle of a ride. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
especially.
I also noticed
Shitty.
something at the aid stations yesterday that was, I actually always chew gum while I ride bikes, and
I
at the
didn't
aid
know
station
that.
they had chewing gum. At the
Really?
aid station, yeah.
Just like freshen up a little bit.
Freshen up, yeah. Maybe it's. I mean,
Is that gonna go in your Beach and Grand Fondo? Like, you gonna do a little?
Ooh, after the pie stop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
when you're
that's
done shoving pie in your face, you just like grab a piece of gum on your way
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Well, I actually started this because I think as an American you just chew gum. You know, I don't know. It's more common. Or else we have better chewing gum brands in Europe.
Yeah.
Or in the U.S. than we do in Europe. Probably they allow more chemicals in the food. But like especially during cold, wet races.
Yeah.
Like you're in Paris or some horrible race in Belgium. You put in a piece of like tropical gum. I feel like it's a psychological.
sends you
It's a
back.
small. Well, it's a small. Like it's
Yeah.
like something refreshing. It feels warming.
It's
And equally on a hot day, put in a piece of mint gum. It's like a little bit.
Yeah,
cool.
it's an armor against like what's really happening to you.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
it's not the suffering you're actually enduring. You're like
Yeah.
enjoying something through what you're eating. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I wish you had told me that 25 years ago, because of all the cold, freezing days that I'm just like covered in mud racing cyclocross. I would have loved that.
Cyclocross, you might choke on a piece because you're breathing
Oh,
hard.
then I'll
and
get
jumping
mud in there
yeah.
too. It'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Actually, when I was
feel
at
very
Sky, one of my directors like, you can't do that because you might choke on it. But I still, you learn how to like, when it goes hard, you can like,
Yeah.
pack it on your teeth and save it for later, put on your stem or
good. Yeah, I
something.
didn't know that about you. Yeah.
Interesting little quirk.
Mhm.
But you've been in cycling for a long time, and we had the chance to take an Uber over last night to the gala with Magnus Sheffield, and we were sharing stories and just how much cycling has changed between when you were racing, when I was racing, and,
Yeah.
and kind of now. But you're still in the sport.
Yeah.
What are you up to these days? Because I mean, actually, you rode past my house in
Yeah.
late
Exactly.
September. You did the VTXL with Ted King. I
Yeah.
saw you at SBT. I mean, you're still heavily involved in the sport of cycling.
Yeah.
What is kind of your life and association with the bike look like these days?
Well, actually, I think that starting off with last night was a great kind of point to stick with, is that I love where cycling is going. When we were speaking to Magnus, who's all of 21, who's starting a very successful career in road cycling and has a background that includes cyclocross, which I was a part of the development team with Cyclocross World in Cannondale that kind of brought him into the sport. it's great that it is so positive. It's great that he has an opportunity to show how talented he is. And in a lot of ways, we were, kind of similar in getting into a sport and kind of like, what's next? Like, where do I go from here? And seeing someone and talking to someone who's on that ladder, especially his ladder, that all the steps are illuminated. You've got like every opportunity in the world
You
to
got the
show
talent, yeah.
how good someone can possibly be in a bike. It's just like that's the thing that keeps me coming back. Being around young riders, being around kind of the sport in a business sense, you get to understand what the background impact or factors are that has an impact on the riders who are currently out there. There's always another layer, and so as a racer, you're always head down. You've got blinders on. It's like I'm trying to win the race. I'm trying to finish the workout. I'm trying to get better in my sport. And then when you get through the race, through the career, through you get to see these different parts. And so, anyways, working in the business of cycling, working in kind of the outdoor world, most recently with Strava, it's like we're in such a fortunate position to be in the sport and to have gone through the sport to this level, that everything I'm involved in, it makes me really excited about what's next. It like gives me the same feeling as I had when I was racing. For the last I started. Now it's 25 plus years ago, so
Wow.
it's still going.
Yeah, Magnus plus 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we had some good stories last night, and I don't know, that there's a lot of the history that you experience is obviously yours personally, but you hear stories from other riders and you kind of pick up on the way things might be, and I just feel like we've been able to do a pretty good job of that, and I feel like it's getting better and better.
Yeah.
When I first started racing, the people who were in the sport didn't really tell you what was going on. Everything was kind of held very close to the chest, and it wasn't an open sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think that there's a real benefit to being more open and having riders who are like, hey, we're in the same boat. We're both going through these, we're moving to Europe, or we're getting an opportunity with a contract. Like, what does this mean? Who do you use for advice when you're, facing a difficult decision, or buying a house? Like all those things. I feel like now it's just such a more open and honest conversation between riders of, the same ilk. Your peers are there to support you.
Yeah. And how much of your role and responsibility now, or just desire now, is around mentorship? And someone like Magnus, who I feel like oftentimes you don't really see what mistakes you made until you're out of it. I look back at Magnus now, I'm like,
For sure.
trying to subtly give him little hints. He's living in Nice now, where I am, so he's asking me questions. Hey, where do I go for this? How do I get a car? All these little things. Trying to hey, if I were your age again now, here's what I would do.
Oh,
it's
man.
you don't want to be too pushy, but you also are trying to.
Well, you don't want to say back in my day.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, you have to say it. But I think you're right. You don't want to give someone the answer. Obviously, when they learn it by themselves with some support, it means more, and maybe the lessons last longer.
Yeah.
So I think mentorship is as far as creating opportunities, one of the things that I did when I was racing was kind of primarily about understanding your value and being more than just a rider who took a paycheck from a team, which was a very limiting kind of experience. And when you looked at the landscape of, you work for sponsors, team ownership, you have media opportunities, there are a lot of ways that you can provide value to people who are backing you or brands that back you, and so it helped my career. And so the lessons are still there, the conversations are still there. Riders who take more of an ownership in where their future lies, they generally will do better long term. Yeah. So I think that's the kind of mentorship that I like to do now. I get asked about oh, hey, would you coach me? And that's a lesson that I look back on. I'm like, you know what? I was a terrible coach to myself. So I don't think I'd be a very good coach for you.
Yeah.
It kind of lets me off the hook a little bit, but that, it's one of the ways to give back a little.
Yeah. And a question, maybe this is asking for advice from you, as someone who we kind of have, in a way, similar lifestyles. We both live in New England. You're in Maine. I'm in Vermont. Worlds away from coming to an event like this. this.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I'm at home, I fail to recognize that people admire what you did, or you forget what you did in your career.
Because you're just Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, you're at home. I've got a kid. I've got work. I'm on the fire. You're all doing all these things.
Yeah.
That they're miles away. No one in Peacham cares that you're a pro cyclist. I'm sure it's similar with you, but like, do you ever come to events like this? And I guess one thing that's resonated with me was like the realization, like, oh wow, people like, you accomplished something in your life, and and for you, you got to the highest level on road. You're the best cyclocross racer in the U.S., and it's weird sometimes to be reminded of that. Like,
Yeah.
Do you ever have that same experience coming to an event that like what you accomplished was something pretty impressive?
Well, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Like you have those things that are like backing you as what people might say about you. I think the hard part is like the people who are like, oh, this is what I did. Like don't ever want to be that person. I feel like we're similar in that respect. But it's so fun. It's like, and that's a great way to have a conversation with someone where you have a moment with someone, especially at an event like this. We're out here for Best Buddies. It's a great cause, and these people are giving their time and their money to support the organization. The 5 minutes that you spend with someone chatting about what they do, while they know that you are the racer that you were and you're active in the industry now, that's what you're there for. But it's also a great reminder of that. And I don't know, everyone comes from somewhere else, and everyone has their own story, and everyone has the thing that drives them to wake up every morning. And we lived very, very unique lives for a long time. And a lot of people look at that and think, oh my God, my life has never been like, I've never been a professional athlete. Like I wonder what that's like. And so the 5 minutes that you spend talking about your story, that's it. It's a beautiful thing, and it's super fun to be able to do that.
Yeah. I want to dive in quickly to cyclocross.
Oh yeah.
Because I guess
it's time of year. We're
in
in Miami. It's total cross runner.
Yeah. But, I grew up in Oregon, so at the time, there was Barry Wicks and Trebon, who were both, living in Oregon at the time. You were kind of, the three of you were kind of the rivals. You guys were going back and forth, week in, week out. Also in Oregon at the time, the Cross Crusades are getting out, thousands of people every single weekend.
Yeah.
Cross has seemed to kind of, I don't say disappear. I mean, in Europe it's still big, but in the US, I feel like it's still the most accessible form of cycling, just because the distance is
short.
where you can train
30
5
minutes,
hours a week.
45 minutes, an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does American cyclocross come back to the level where it was when it was yourself and Jonathan Page and Trebon and all the female Americans? We had the most successful, almost discipline of all American.
I feel like we're on another
cross.
sub-channel. This is a like and subscribe opportunity. This is a whole other chapter.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to break down into a quick, succinct answer.
Yeah.
But I think it's a phase within cycling that was a big groundswell of interest and support and excitement, and people were able to get into it and experience it. We're seeing a lot of those same things in gravel. And so for me, it's just like the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Whether or not cyclocross will return to the U.S. in a big way and bring back the World Championships again and have multiple World Cups instead of just one. I think there's some underlying issues with the sport that are occurring right now at the governing body. The UCI is kind of struggling to maintain not control of the sport, but probably putting down the direction that it should go. And again, it's like the more things change, the more they say the same. This is a 30-year-old conversation. So I don't know where it's going to go. But I'm thankful that a lot of the young riders now are getting into the sport through gravel, because that is also generally accessible. It's a problem when you can't get into a race because there's no entries left. It fills up in 5 minutes. That's a real problem that we need to solve for young riders. But I think development opportunities for the best young riders in the U.S. will come through gravel, men and women, and that's where the real opportunity is for me and for the generation that came right after me in cyclocross. It was cross, so I think it's switched to gravel.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the coolest things that I see now in professional cycling, is that athletes are multidisciplined. I think this all started with Van der Poel and Wout and Pidcock. Where athletes are doing multiple. Well, you as well. Yeah, you as well. But like that you're seeing, because I guess your generation had a little bit of that. You would see Grand Tour riders maybe doing class. I mean, maybe after your generation, but Hino did the
Yeah,
tour and he did
no,
the
it's true. Yeah,
My generation was like, if you want to be a Grand Tour rider, like you don't do the classics, you don't do cyclocross, you don't
Yeah.
ride a mountain bike, like you just do this. And now it's kind of like you said, everything's cyclical. It's like it's like it's just coming around.
it was like that was the era of specialization, which could be considered sterilization, because these riders became very narrow focused and they got placed into buckets. Whether or not they chose those buckets themselves, they were placed there, and that's what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Freeing that up a little more, freeing it up to be able to jump into another discipline. I think that shows the health of the economy of the sport, that these vested interests are willing to take a risk, in some ways, or at least support riders who are able to do that. But, Marianne Vos is like a great example of someone who did multidiscipline racing with no support. It was told not to do it and fought against it, and she really kind of was a trailblazer in being able to make that a viable thing, and she's the reason why Vanderpool and Wout and Pidcock are able to do it. I mean, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot was the world champion of all three disciplines at once in the same year.
This year or last year?
No, this is like 6 years ago.
But again this year, I guess sorry, not this year, but she did win mountain bike worlds.
Yeah.
She's gonna go for cyclocross worlds, and then I guess Olympics next year, potentially road and mountain bike.
So the road is definitely being paved and unpaved by the best women in the sport.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool to see it, especially when they also represent it across social media, and everyone knows them for being these different things. And when I started racing, if you were a mountain biker, you were a mountain biker. If you were a road rider, you were a road rider. You didn't switch. Cross was kind of the place where you could meet in the middle, but now it seems like you just go between all three.
Yeah. Last question. There is a poster here at Max Cycle of you. There's a
Really?
big over in the corner over there. There's a big like I don't know whatever this material is, like a billboard.
Oh yeah.
And you're at the front. It's a cyclocross race.
Ooh.
You're iconically at the front, leading the bunch.
I gotta check that out. I'll take a photo.
Take a photo and also let me know if you know which race it was and which year.
Probably. I don't know. It
I
depends
guess
how.
you would know the kit and you'd be able to kind of like narrow it down.
Depends how fuzzy it is, but isn't that cool? Like to be able to look back and see like where you were. They're chapters in your life.
Yeah.
They're like it represents maybe what you were doing at that time frame. To remember the specific days, I think that's where like you might think as hard as you can, you'll never remember, but there were a lot of those moments. Like I look back at some of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had, and I think like when I'm reminded of them, especially randomly, it does give me that feeling of like, all right, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got to do really cool things.
Yeah, and that is a cool thing. It's like no one can take that away from you. And
No.
especially at the level you were racing at, where like you were on the start line every weekend for these cross races. Like I can win today.
A chance of winning was high.
Yeah,
Like I
exactly.
just got to be able to execute it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, thank you so much.
course.
I'm gonna bring in Mary Holden as our last guest.
I'll send up
And-
the flag for it. I'll go
Yeah,
there.
and then what about this afternoon? The boat. Are you gonna go on it?
Yeah, no,
you live on the coast now.
why
so
wouldn't we go on a boat for the afternoon?
I just don't want to get seasick and spend the rest of the day wobbling.
Well, it's good prep for gravel. I mean, we're riding gravel
True,
tomorrow,
true.
so we can go spend the day totally away from any soil and then come back tomorrow.
There we go.
But gravel's big in Miami.
I've heard.
This is like the
Yeah.
levees holding back the Everglades.
Yeah.
We're riding across those, and it's gonna be great.
We'll see. I just don't. I heard stories of anacondas and pythons and alligators.
Just don't fall in the water.
Rattlesnakes.
Whatever you do, do not fall in
yeah.
the water.
I heard Chris was down in there last year trying to catch snakes.
Yeah.
All right, last
Tomorrow's-
guest, Tim.
tomorrow's on our way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
See you out there.
Yeah.
Here you go, Mari.
It's my turn.
It is.
All right.
Thank you, Tim.
Hey.
Yeah.
Please.
Wow.
Allow me.
What service?
Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't touch that. There you go.
Thanks.
Mari, how you enjoyed the weekend thus far? I guess it's only Saturday, but I guess I feel like we've done a lot thus far.
We have done a lot, and it's been great. I mean, I was telling the organization earlier today that they do such a great job for putting on a first-class event, and this is the first time I've been to Miami Gala, but I had been to their other rides on the West Coast and up in Hyannisport, and they always do an incredible job, but they knocked it out of the park. I think.
Yeah. And how did you get involved with Best Buddies?
I was just thinking about it, trying to remember the first time I did Best Buddies, and it was in 2006. I did it when I was just retiring from cycling. I came out with, well, Bob Stapleton was supposed to go with me, but then he couldn't go, so I came out by myself and just did the ride to Hearst Castle and had an amazing time. And since then, you know, I've stayed involved.
Yeah. And you're still at USA Cycling, correct?
I am. I work for the foundation.
Yes. And I mean, we should actually also mention you have an Olympic medal, you have a world champion jersey. Actually, you're probably the most accomplished of all of us who we've spoken to so far. But when you were racing in this, like, you know, I guess late '90s, early 2000s generation, women's cycling looked a lot different than it does now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the sport has professionalized a lot. And you've also been a part of that. You've been part of like the growth and advocacy for, you know, women's cycling. Where is it at, and where do you think the next steps and gains are going to be made?
Wow, that's a pretty big question.
We got time. We got time.
Well, I'm going to back up and say, you know, I retired around 2006, and it took me a few years to get back involved, like on the racing side of the sport. But I came back to direct with Team 2020, or maybe at that time it was Team 2016.
Yeah.
And so I started with directing, really enjoyed that. And then right before the pandemic, I had switched over to take a job at USA Cycling as a national team coach for under 23. So all the kids, you know, U23 and juniors. And I was super excited about that, but then we went through some restructuring, and I came back in this role in the foundation, engaging with our donors and, you know, trying to grow our sport on the financial side to help our development. And then, now the next part of your question was about the, what was it? About the, oh God.
Just
Where
where
women's
women's cycling
cycling
has come from
Yeah.
and where it's come. Because I mean, you know, this, or I guess it was the last year, was the, you know, people kind of say, oh, it's the first, you know, Tour de France Fens. But I mean, there was a Tour de France Fens 35 years ago.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it, you know, it's kind of like, you know, come full circle.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting because watching, I do a podcast too, the We Do podcast, and I, you know, they were talking about the Women's Tour de France and going up Alpe d'Huez, and we actually did Alpe d'Huez in it back in '93, the first time I went there. And so I feel like in some ways, you know, we didn't have the same money, but we got to experience some longer stage races and stuff. At that time we had 3 probably 12 to 14 day races a year, but the financial support there wasn't there. It wasn't like it is now for the World Tour girls. So I'm really excited to see where things are headed, and even as recently as when I was directing, the budgets were so much lower and salaries were super low. So to see the women being able to make a living at it now, I think is incredible, and we're headed in the right direction. A big part of it is the streaming that you can do now. And I feel like once you bring that into the picture, then you start having, you know, sponsors wanting to be involved more. Little girls can have heroes. It's really been fun. And I'm excited to be involved with it still. And, you know, hopefully we bring along some amazing, you know, women from the US too.
And, you know, I follow the sport probably as much now as I did when I was racing, and you do, as you have your own, well, since your podcast, but during the Tour de France Fens, you're with We Do, with Allison, covering the race daily. How much time and energy goes into that? Because it's a lot. You know, there's a lot that happens during the stage, and like there's all the names, and like especially, you know, being an American, like, you know, you get some names like, how do I pronounce this? You know, and like I just skirt around this person and talk about something else. Do you enjoy doing that?
I really do, actually, and it's kind of, I look forward to that week. This was our second year doing it, obviously, since it was the second year of the women's tour. But it's been, you know, we wake up in the morning, we watch the event together. So we're doing it live, watching and talking and cheering and stuff. And then we get into the studio and we do a kind of debrief on what happened and what do we want to talk about in the show. And then we just let it kind of happen naturally through the show, but we definitely have a list of things that we want to make sure that we're doing. But you're right, it takes a huge amount of like background work to make it, you know, come off well. And it's the other thing I wanted to say about, you know, this event in particular, the Best Buddies event, and I was thinking, you know, Richard and those guys this morning, because I feel like if an event goes off as well as this one did, and it takes a huge amount of work in the background that no one's seeing. And so if people aren't saying anything about, you know, if you don't hear complaining and the ride is smooth and they've done their job really well, you don't know that they've been doing it, right?
Exactly.
And that was my point to him, is that, hey, you guys really deserve some kudos, because you pulled off an incredible event, and it's no easy thing to make an event roll down the road and happen, especially on something like this where you have so many different ability levels. And I thought they did an incredible job.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I guess that's like, you're right. Like when we, the ride starts at 7 a.m. yesterday. When we rock up at 6:45 with our bikes, and it's like, cool. There's like a start march. There's an announcer. There's like the police convoy. I'm like, there's like months and months of planning that goes into this, and especially this event. I don't know the population of Miami, but it's got to be, I don't know, 5-10 million people, and to like just be able to work with the police to like close down the roads to give everyone that opportunity and like experience of riding on closed roads is something that, I mean, you and I don't get that very often anymore.
No, and it's one of the things that's difficult right now in the U.S. for racing in general is that we've lost our really big road races, like the Tour of California, the Tour of Colorado. We had some really great ones for a while that were produced by Medalist Sports, and so I was working with them doing kind of their VIP driving and hospitality at their events, and I've got to see like what goes on behind the scenes, and it takes a huge number of people all being coordinated really well in order to pull off something that looks seamless. And so, and I think about that as same as in racing, like you have your list of what you need to do and stuff. But I really appreciate the work that goes into something like this, and hope that we can convince people to do it for racing again too. Because like kids seeing this thing go down the street, they get excited, and they're like, I want to do it too. And
we passed a couple schools yesterday, and like the whole playground was out there. Like, this is awesome.
It's amazing, and so I just hope that we can start getting some racing going again here in the States.
Well, and so with your work with USA Cycling, I don't know how tight in you are with just the organization as a whole. And I mean, in the U.S., we're in this really unique time where there are more people maybe riding than ever, with this growth of gravel. We have some amazing American cyclists racing professionally across all disciplines. Chloe Deiger was here yesterday, world champion, like probably odds-on favorite for an Olympic medal next year. But I guess the generation that's currently racing came through an era where there was, I guess right like at my time coming through, there was like amazing funding. We had opportunities to go race in Europe for 4 or 5 months of the year and get that experience. But we also could come back to the U.S. and we had, like you said, California and Utah, Colorado, Cascade Cycling Classic. Almost all of those races have disappeared. To counter that, there's this huge growth of gravel cycling. So riders still have opportunities to race. And what does that pathway look like? It hasn't really been seen. Can riders come through doing junior gravel races and then, win SBT and then go to the World Tour or professional gravel teams? We don't know what that looks like. But USA Cycling ultimately also holds the keys to Olympic medals, to world championships. Everything is funneled through, USA Cycling as our governing body. Being closely tied to that, what's going on like in the boardrooms? Like how do we, also the reality is USA Cycling gets funding through Olympic medals and world championships. So that's also important. How does USA Cycling continue to like take these talented athletes and like make sure that we continually have a stream of athletes and I guess Olympic potential?
Well, I'm going to start back where you started this. And one of the things you were in the build-up was talking about how you spent years racing in Europe in order to make it to a World Tour team, and that's still hugely important for development. So we start bringing kids over when they're, as juniors, and then they start racing, as you start racing against the people you're going to be competing against for years and years, and so you're getting that experience that's going to help you be good at the top. And Chloe Deiger, I was her director when she was a junior.
That's true.
So it's kind of funny, but anyhow, like back to the USA Cycling piece, I don't think people understand, one of the things I don't think they understand is we don't get funding from the government. So we are always out there trying to find sponsors and also trying to find donors who help us get those kids over to Europe in order to get the experience they need to be successful. And it's always going to be important because Europe is where the road racing is and where the experience is. The amazing thing that's happening right now in U.S. cycling, NICA is one of them in gravel. And so NICA is the high school mountain bike league, and basically I think we're getting a lot of kids out of there trying things like mountain biking, road riding.
Yeah.
And so trying to identify kids early and getting them into some of the camps is important. And obviously, the more we have such a huge country.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of opportunity, with limited funds.
Yeah.
So, I think, and one of the things that's been really great is the fact that you can train online now too.
Yeah.
So you can actually be seeing someone's numbers.
Yeah, we'll train and race.
Right.
Yeah,
you can see it all.
Yeah.
And so that helps, kind of weeding people out or saying, oh wow, there's maybe some potential that we should look at further,
Yeah.
right? And then I also think that the gravel is really helpful because people are just enjoying it and they're getting out there and riding their bikes. And as
Yeah.
long as the cycling industry is healthy, I think it's going to help us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see just like how it shifts and how it changes. Because I don't know what it was like when you were, a young rider coming up, and like what sort of, there's also these ebbs and flows of like of funding, of also like pockets of cyclists. You look at I guess Boulder, Colorado's like just how many cyclists come out of there, and like how much of that is like location versus just culture. And there's a culture of cyclists there who their parents are in it, so the kids get into it, and then also the next thing there's 10 pro riders that come out of a town of
Right.
100,000 people, and you have LA, and there's 10
Like
million
Durango
people, and
or,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, so at USA Cycling, because the country is so big, but talent does come from all over the place, and I know there are these talent ID camps. There's virtual racing. Even at SBT, I forget what it was called. USA Cycling had a bike set up, like a
So
essentially.
that's our new program, Search for Speed,
Yeah, that's it,
where we were having people come in. Anyone could come in. It's like a combine. Basically, you go out there, you do your power test, like 15-second power test.
Yeah.
So I think we're trying to figure out new ways to identify athletes, and the Search for Speed's a little different because they are looking specifically for track sprinters.
Yeah.
So we're traditionally very good at the roadside and
Yeah.
endurance stuff, not as good at the sprint events.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of medals in the sprint events. So we decided to focus attention on that. And plus it brings new people into the sport, maybe a football player who didn't make it to the NFL, or, maybe there are these other people who just want to be competitive but aren't necessarily like,
Yeah.
in
Not
their
traditional
other sport.
cyclists,
Traditional,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess that's mine.
Yeah, we were here. We did a kicker night here at Max Cycle 2-3 nights ago, and there was a gentleman, bigger guy, and he was like, I don't know if I can like compete with these people because they're all so much lighter. I'm like, no, but it's all it's virtual.
No,
so
this
like,
is good.
And I was like sitting behind him as he started. I think it was like a 1.5 mile race. So it was, short but still long.
Right.
And he was just holding 800 watts the whole time. I was like, oh my goodness, like he has so much power.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes, when you look at the U.S. and just, kids are also drawn to other sports. There are, because there's not, if you grow up in a community that, football or soccer or basketball, that's the sport, oftentimes those sports are drawing the talent
Right.
there rather than cycling, where if you're in, Belgium or, France.
Or Boulder, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you mentioned it in those areas where people are more into the sport in general. You find more kids coming out of there. So
Yeah.
I think we just need to figure out how do we reach those kids that we haven't normally been reaching, because there is a huge amount of talent out there.
Yeah.
If we can just find it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is, like, as someone who came through a very fortunate time of American cycling, we kind of run the back of this era where we had a lot of success in, especially in, men's and women's racing professionally in Europe, where it was like there was funding, there was tons of opportunity, and it still is there. Both, I'm not sure if you know Gavin Mannion and Tanner Putt, two kids I raced with, who are now directing the U23 and the junior team. And it's cool to see.
Tanner's running I think all of road cycling.
He is, yeah.
At USA Cycling. Yeah.
And it's cool, and sometimes I feel like he's like the perfect person in that position, because he had a really successful career, but he sees the faults that he made, or the fault the resources that weren't there. And I think sometimes that's a great way of doing it. People, oftentimes the best coaches weren't the best players.
Yeah.
Like they saw things differently than the people at the top. Like, oh, I just did this, and it's like, well, yeah, but you were super talented, so it was easy.
If you made a mistake, it didn't show as much.
You could still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, do you think the future of American cycling is bright?
Yeah, I think it's really good, especially when you look at the guys coming up right now. We had several of them here, and it's just that crew with Magnus and
Steph Cuss and
Steph Cuss.
McNulty.
They're all starting to come into their own. Obviously,
Yeah.
with Steph winning the Vuelta was huge for American
Yeah.
cycling, but the other guys are getting there,
Yeah.
you know, and they're still young. So I think the potential for 2028, the LA
Yeah.
Olympics, is good, and we're bringing in even younger kids now. So
Yeah.
hopefully, I mean, LA 2028 is a huge goal for USA Cycling.
Yeah.
So.
Olympic Games coming up.
You know, and I mean, I remember when the Olympics were in California the last time, in Los
Yeah.
Angeles in
Is that
'84,
Yeah.
and that kind of motivated me to want to be an Olympic athlete. So I feel like when you have a home games,
Yeah.
you're inspiring another generation. Now we just need to get these kids to where, you know, we have a more depth for this next Olympics.
Yeah.
But like you were saying with Chloe and, you know, the guys who are coming up now, the McNulty's and stuff will still be racing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's looking good.
Yeah. And are you staying on with USA Cycling next year?
Yeah,
Next
I
year?
mean, I hope so.
Yeah. Heard it here first.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying it, and the thing is that I think it's allowing me to feel like a part of bringing, you know, giving more kids the opportunities that I was offered, that you are offered,
Yeah.
and really understanding the pipeline and how do we get kids to being able to win Olympic medals or world championships,
Yeah.
because it's not just physical, it's mental, and then the other piece is like learning how to be an athlete and on the road and dealing with other hotels and all those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So it's fun for me to be involved in it, and then getting to see these next generations of kids coming up.
Yeah. And being someone who has had the phenomenal career yourself, who's directed, coached, managed teams, now working at USA Cycling, what advice would you give to a young rider who's listening to this, or, you know, is considering being a professional cyclist or going down that pathway and journey? I mean, through all you've observed and seen, what are like a few tips and just pieces of advice that you would say
I
to
think
get
the
there?
biggest thing that I would tell a young athlete is that, you know, if you really want something, it's going to take a lot of hard work and passion, but it also means not quitting when things get difficult. Because I can look back at my career to several points where you're on that cusp of, what am I doing, or do I do it, right? And always my attitude was to dig in and just keep going, right?
Yeah.
And even though sometimes you have to go through this lull, when you come out on the other side, you're much better for it, and you kind of bring yourself to the next level. Similar to training, you know, you overdo it,
Yeah.
you rest, and then you get a higher level. So I think that that's kind of the most important thing, is somebody who can persevere and work hard, and when things aren't good, telling themselves that it's worth it, and that, you know, and it's self-talk.
Yeah, no, it's true. It really, you know, even, you know, Magnus, who we got to spend some time with last night, and even, you know, Chloe's like
Yeah.
maybe even a better example. Like, she had this multiple years of just,
Yeah.
but the fact that she kept doing the physical therapy, kept training, kept, you know, seeing that it was still possible to come back. It's like, I don't know if I could have spent that long not racing and still seeing, okay, I'm going to make it back. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's insane.
It's real. I mean, it is kind of mind-blowing what Chloe has done.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, multiple injuries, and
Yeah.
then comes back and wins the world championship. Now's our best hope for, you know, the Olympics.
Yeah.
You know, because she could theoretically get 3 medals, you know, in team
Yeah.
pursuit, road, and time trial.
Yeah.
And I would say the time trial, she's a, you know, favorite for winning.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, U.S. women's cycling has not had a gold medal on the road since Connie Carpenter.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
we've never, or when I say road,
Yeah,
I mean
just
road
the
or
road
time
race.
trial.
Yeah.
You know, and but Chloe has a real good shot. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
actually, Kristen
Kristen
has
did
her
in the
3
time
in the
trial.
time
Yeah.
trial, but Chloe has I think, the potential to do something like that
win
on
the
the
road
road
race,
too.
yeah.
So it's a little bit,
Yeah.
a little different, but but
Yeah.
amazing, and that she could do even more Olympics is awesome.
Yeah. And have you had a chance? Lastly, we're gonna wrap it up here. Have you had a chance to walk around the bike shop?
Yes.
Do you see any memorabilia that like stuck? There's a piece of memorabilia that maybe you also noticed that like really stuck out to me. It's like, oh, that's really unique.
Oh no, I didn't
I
see
saw-
it. Now I have to see it.
There's did you go to the Olympics in Atlanta in '96?
No,
Okay.
that was one of those points where you're like, I should have gone.
Yeah.
And you know, you have to get past that
Yeah.
that piece of I didn't go.
Yeah. But there's one of the they made the custom track time trial bikes for the Team Pursuit.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's like
GT,
Vanderbilt's bike.
yeah.
GT, and they
It's
have
a
one
project.
of them. Yeah.
Project 96.
Yes. And I saw one at OTC in
Mm-hmm.
2005 or 6, and they have one here, and I was like, oh, there's only like 5 of those bikes in the world, and one of
Yeah.
them's here. It's pretty cool to check.
That is pretty cool. I'll have to look because
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Good eye.
Yeah. And the boat this afternoon, you gonna head out?
I'm actually not heading on the boat this afternoon, but.
No, keep going, keep going.
No, I guess the answer is no.
So I can't read your handwriting there, Tim. It's okay, but yeah.
No, but it's been great talking with you, and yeah, I think things are looking good for us in the U.S. and events like this is what keeps people getting more excited about cycling and kind of seeing what's out there, and the fact that we're supporting such an incredible organization doing great work in their communities has been a blessing to be involved.
Awesome. Well,
Mhm.
Mary, sorry. Mary. Yeah, I've said that
No,
Mary a
you know
couple
what?
times.
Everyone calls me. It's either Mary or Maria. Like I never get Mari, but
Mari, yes.
so I pretty much answer to anything.
Yeah, started with an M. Got it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank
and,
you.
Yeah, I think we'll about wrap it up there. Got something else? Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess if we're still live, I should say thank you everyone for tuning in to this live episode of Breakfast with Boz here from Max Cycles in Miami, Florida. Yeah, we've been here for the Best Buddies Challenge, and hopefully we'll come back next year, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And if any of you ever find yourself in Miami, definitely come check out Max Cycles. Not just like the products that they have for sale, but it really is like a museum. There's a lot of cycling memorabilia here, and it's really cool to check out. So until next time, stay safe.